What's up, sons? It's Blind with Son of a Tech once again, and today we're going to be going over how to enable Hyper-V and installing an operating system on it to manage our wallets. The only requirements are that you have a Windows 10 professional operating system already, and that's the example we're going to be using today as the host machine, and that you have either an AMD CPU that supports AMD-V or an Intel CPU that supports VT-X. So those are the requirements. Let's get into it. Welcome back. So we're just going to start with a clean install of Windows 10 Professional on your host system. Make sure that you do all of the proper security features that you can find. I will leave a link to a few in the description below, because the security of your guests or the systems you're going to be installing as VMs are only as secure as your host operating system. So keep all of that in mind. The preparation that we're going to want to do is essentially go and grab ourselves the media creation tool, which I'll leave a link to in the description below for Windows 10. And we're going to use this to get a Windows 10 ISO from it. So if you double click the media creation tool and open it up, you will go through the specific licensing, all of that. And then on what to do, you're going to say create installation media and click next through the next file. And you're going to select ISO file and click next. At this point, it will download or ask you to specify a location for your ISO and then download it. We've already downloaded one just to make things go a little bit quicker. And as you can see here in our downloads, we've put a Windows ISO here. Now, for sake of cleanliness, we're just going to go ahead and navigate ourselves into the app data folder under our user. So I'm going to use Blind Run as an example. And the app data folder is a good one to use because it's typically hidden. However, most people know where to find it. So I always like to hide the files for my VHDs. So for example, we're going to create two folders in app data. So we'll go right click, new folder. And the first one we're going to do is ISOs. And this is where we're going to place our Windows 10 ISO. And then we're just going to do another folder and name it VHD for virtual hard disk. I'm going to go into the properties here and check the hidden folder and click apply. And that way, if I go in later and do folder options, show hidden files and options, I can say don't show hidden files, click apply, and now you can see that that folder is gone. This just is a little bit of, most people will be able to find it eventually, but I like to hide them. It's also a cool little trick, just heads up. And we will not need to really do that for ISOs, because for ISOs all we're going to do is copy the Windows ISO and come back over and paste the Windows ISO in here just so I know where everything is. At this point I know that all of my ISOs are in users, Blind Run, app data, ISO. So I'll have complete access to that when I get ready. Now let's talk about enabling Hyper-V. So first you're going to have to go into your BIOS. So we're going to initiate a restart and then tap the delete key to get into our BIOS. This is where you will enable either VT-X for Intel, or in this case AMD-V for AMD. You don't need any of the features like IMMOU, so if the processor doesn't support that, don't really fret, because you don't really want to be passing through any devices as it is. Alrighty, so hopping into the BIOS, every single motherboard is going to be a little bit different, but this is the ASRock X399 Tai Chi motherboard with an AMD Ryzen Threadripper. You'll click over into the advanced options, and then we are going to be looking for SVM mode, which enables or disables CPU virtualization, which we're going to want to enable. And I did read the manual. This is specifically provided by AMD-V. I do not know why they call it SVM mode in this particular motherboard, but just look at your motherboard manufacturer's manual to figure out what you need to do. At this point, we can save and exit. Okay, so now that we know we've enabled the virtualization feature on the motherboard in the BIOS, we can go ahead and do a quick search for enable features, I believe it is. And it should come up with turn Windows features on or off. That's just the quickest way. There's many ways to skin a cat. I realize that. You can leave all your various ways in the description below, and we'll be happy to discuss them. So you're just going to scroll down, you're going to be looking for Hyper-V. And as you can see here, everything's not grayed out. If this is grayed out, you probably need to re-enable it in the BIOS or go back into the BIOS and check it out and make sure that you have it enabled. So we're gonna enable the management tools as well as the hypervisor and the services. The management tools is what we're gonna use essentially to control our VMs. And then the hypervisor itself is gonna be all of, or the platform itself, everything under here is going to be all the services and everything that runs on the Windows 10 Pro operating system that allows us to essentially create virtual machines. And we're going to click OK. It's going to enable the features and then typically requires a reboot. Alrighty, so it'll prompt you to restart now, and we're just going to go ahead and reboot. So once the reboot is complete, we should be able to find the Hyper-V manager. You can just do a quick search for Hyper-V. Like I said, many ways to skin a cat. Right click. I like to pin to taskbar since this should be the only thing you're going to be using this host system for. And you can see that we have the host here. It's just a random desktop name for us because I never renamed it. Creating a new virtual machine is as simple as this. We're going to do a right click, highlight new, and click virtual machine. We're going to click next, and we're going to name this one SOAT-Wallet 01. I prefer to, if this is your real life system, just naming a specific wallet. We'll do Ethereum for an example. So we'll do Ethereum and click next and then select Gen 2 and next again. I'm going to use dynamic memory in this instance just so I don't have a whole bunch of extra memory always allocated to a single machine. Click next and we'll see here actually, and I wanted to demonstrate this to y'all, that we have no connection. So before we continue, we need to create a new connection. We can do this by going into our virtual switch manager and then coming in here and creating an external switch. External means it's going out to the internet, and we'll just do VS01 for virtual switch 01. We could even do it for fun, SOAT for son of attack. So son of attack virtual switch 01, and we'll select our connector. We're going to use we have the AC wireless connection 1 and 2 because we do have dual NICs. There's a lot of good extra things you can do if you have multiple NICs or even a wireless connection and a separate connection, so you can split them between your hosts. We're not going to go over that because I feel like that's going to be a little bit more in depth later on that we can cover. We're going to click apply now and OK. So now if we go back in and do new virtual machine, click next and we do SOAT-ETH. I'm just going to do it that way because it seems cooler. I actually do want to store this in a different location. It by default will store it here. But if you remember, guys, we did create a hidden folder under our app data folder called VHD. So I'm going to select that folder just to hide things a little bit more. It's probably not going to help a lot because if they get into your Hyper-V manager, they're going to be able to find it anyways, just to clarify with y'all. So I'm going to do generation 2, dynamic memory like we talked about, and now I can select my switch. This will give our operating system that we're going to install access to the external interwebs. And we'll click next and we will adjust the size. The minimum disk space required for Windows 10 is 16 gigabytes. I like to be a little bit more conservative with 32. It depends, maybe if you have a smaller hard drive and 16 is all you can spare per wallet, that's okay. Remember, we are doing one wallet per VM to isolate the wallets from each other in case one gets infected. We'll click next and then we can click the install an operating system from bootable image file. This is the Windows 10 image file we downloaded earlier. So I'm going to go back into my app data folder into ISOs and select Windows 10.iso and then click next and finish. It'll create it, and then at this point we can go into settings and review all of the settings. The first thing we want to check is going to be the security. So on secure boot, you'll only be able to boot from a Microsoft Windows VM. If the secure boot is enabled, you will only be able to select or install a Windows operating system. So if you're going to be installing Ubuntu operating systems, well, I would recommend you use a different virtualization software, but if you were to, you would need to come in here and uncheck this, for example. We are going to want to enable encryption, so we're going to enable TPM and encrypt state and virtual machine migration traffic. This is for added security. The memory we're going to leave alone, and the processor we can up for the installation at least. I'll up it to 4. You won't need this while running the wallet. You can always go back down to 1, but this is just going to help us install the operating system a little bit quicker right now. Like I said, put this back to 1. So once you've enabled TPM, you can click Apply and OK. And at this point, we can go ahead and right-click the virtual machine and click Connect. And then we can click Start. At this point, we can press any key to boot into the ISO that we attached to the virtual machine and install Windows 10. Alrighty, so that's going to wrap up enabling Hyper-V on Windows 10 Professional and installing Windows 10 Pro onto a VM. That should cover everything to get you started, and then we'll start talking about configuring Windows 10 Pro in the Hyper-V environment for installing a wallet and some of the security protocols, or I guess best practices that you should take if you're going to follow this route. As always, I would suggest that your best option would either be a hardware wallet for some of the more popular coins, and for the less popular coins, checking out Qubes OS. I will be covering Qubes OS in a later video, and it pretty much uses the same principles that we're doing here, but as opposed to being on a level 2 hypervisor, it's a bare bones and it doesn't have this kind of setup all the way. It's a little bit more secure. There are reasons for that. We'll cover it when we talk about it. If you are IT savvy enough to figure it out on your own, I highly recommend giving it a shot already, and I'll leave a link in the description below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next Tuesday.